It's actually adaptive for a child to internalize badness and fault, because at least then they can hold on to the idea that their parents and the world around them is safe and good.
From the moment you opened your eyes in this world, something unseen has been shaping your thoughts. It whispered to you before you could speak, wrapped itself around your imagination, and shaped the way you saw yourself. You never agreed to it. You simply absorbed it long before you even knew it was happening. They've been programming your mind since childhood. Here's how. The illusion you never questioned. The world you were born into was not built to make you free. It was designed to mold you, to turn you into something predictable. There was no single person behind it, no secret council of hooded figures controlling the strings. It was something deeper, older, more embedded in everything around you. Society itself carried it forward like an invisible current, pulling you under before you had the strength to swim. When you were a child, you saw the world in a raw and untamed way. Every object had life, every shadow had mystery. A cardboard box could be a castle, the stars could whisper secrets, and your dreams felt as real as the ground beneath your feet. But as you grew, they took that away from you, not with force, not with chains, but with carefully placed words, repeated again and again, until they became your own thoughts. Be realistic. Stop imagining things. That's just how the world works. With every correction, with every guiding hand, the cage formed around your mind. What once was boundless became limited. What once was magical became ordinary. You were told what was possible and what was not, and you believed it. This conditioning was not random. It was a blueprint passed down through generations, shaping you into something that fits neatly into the structure of society. It was a silent program, installing itself into your mind, running in the background of your thoughts. Every institution, every expectation, every normal thing reinforced it. Religions taught you to fear questioning. Schools taught you to obey without understanding why. Media filled your mind with distractions, keeping you too busy to wonder if there was more. Even the people who loved you unknowingly played their part, repeating the same lessons they were given as children, never realizing the prison they were helping to build. You may have felt it before, the quiet discomfort, the nagging thought that something isn't right, that life shouldn't feel like a loop, that happiness shouldn't be something you only get in brief moments. You may have brushed it off, convinced yourself it was just the way things are. But deep down, a part of you knows. A part of you remembers what it felt like to be free before they programmed you. The ancient Taoists spoke of the concept of the uncarved block, Pu, as a metaphor for the original unconditioned state of being. In Taoism, Pu represents a mind that is open, simple, and untouched by the rigid structures of societal conditioning. Like an unshaped piece of wood, it is pure potential, free from limiting beliefs, expectations, and artificial identities. Laozi, in the Tao Te Ching, suggests that wisdom comes not from accumulating knowledge, but from returning to this natural state of spontaneity, flow, and authenticity. Yet as people grow, society carves them into predefined shapes, identities based on culture, expectations, and past experiences. Over time, the self becomes fragmented, trapped in roles and labels that obscure its original limitless nature. Taoist philosophy teaches that by letting go of these imposed identities, one can return to a state of wholeness and flow with the Tao, the natural way of the universe. Similarly, in Hindu philosophy, the illusion of control is known as Maya, which refers to the grand illusion that keeps people attached to false realities. According to Advaita Vedanta, Maya is the veil that distorts true perception, making individuals believe they are separate, limited beings rather than part of the infinite, undivided consciousness known as Brahman. This illusion manifests through ego attachment and a belief in external control, trapping people in cycles of suffering, samsara. The Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads teach that true liberation, moksha, comes from seeing through Maya, recognizing that the self is not the body, not the mind, not even the personal identity, but pure awareness itself. In other words, just as the Taoist seeks to return to the uncarved block, the Hindu seeker aims to dissolve the illusions that separate them from their true, formless nature. Both traditions point to the same, deeper truth. The self is not something small, fixed or defined. It is vast, formless, and beyond conditioning. The only thing keeping people asleep is the illusion that they are anything less than infinite. When Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven," Matthew 18:3, he was pointing to a profound spiritual truth. Many interpret this as a call to innocence or moral purity, but a deeper reading reveals something more: the child's unfiltered perception of reality before conditioning takes hold. A child does not yet see the world through the rigid filters of society, fear, or past trauma. They experience life directly with wonder, curiosity, and an openness that adults often lose. They are not burdened by overthinking, self-doubt, or the need to conform to expectations. Their sense of self has not yet been distorted by the voices of others, the conditioning from parents, teachers, culture, and media that gradually shape their beliefs about who they are and what is possible. As people grow, they absorb these external voices, often without realizing it. They are taught what is realistic, what is acceptable, and who they are supposed to be. Over time, their true essence becomes buried beneath layers of conditioning: fear, shame, limiting beliefs, and the pressure to fit into predefined roles. But Jesus was not calling for blame. He was calling for awakening. This is not about resenting those who shaped us, but about recognizing that we have been shaped at all. It is about seeing clearly for the first time, realizing that much of what we believe about ourselves is simply inherited programming. This idea aligns with spiritual traditions across the world. Zen Buddhism teaches the concept of Shoshin, or beginner's mind, a way of approaching life with openness and a lack of preconceptions. In all these traditions, the message is the same. To awaken is to unlearn. It is to strip away the false narratives, the inherited fears, and the limiting beliefs that obscure our true nature. It is not about becoming something new, but about returning to what we always were, before the world told us otherwise. This is what Jesus was pointing to. The kingdom of heaven is not a distant place, but a state of being, one that can only be accessed when we return to the clarity, openness, and presence of a child. The way you think, the way you react, even the way you dream, it has been shaped by forces you never questioned. And if you don't break free from it, you will spend your entire life playing a role that was written for you before you even knew how to read. But breaking free isn't easy. The program doesn't like to be challenged. It will fight to keep you in place. It will use fear, doubt, and the voices of those around you to pull you back into line. If you start to question too much, you'll hear the echoes of the program speaking through others. Why are you thinking like this? You're just being dramatic. That's just conspiracy talk. But is it? Or is it the program defending itself? The moment you begin to see the cage, the moment you realize how deep it goes, something shifts. You start noticing patterns you once ignored. Advertisements influence you, news shapes your emotions, and entertainment keeps your mind occupied just enough to avoid deeper thinking. But something inside you is waking up. You wouldn't be watching this if it weren't. The next step is dangerous, because once you see the program for what it is, you can never unsee it. You will start to recognize it everywhere, in conversations, in the rules you were taught, and in the beliefs you once thought were yours. You will begin to wonder what is truly you and what was placed inside you, and that's when the real battle begins. Not against others, but against the parts of you that still cling to the illusion, the parts of you that are afraid to let go, the parts that whisper, maybe it's safer to just play along. But you didn't come here to play along. You came here to wake up. The program follows a pattern, a script, like a song everyone knows but no one remembers learning. But who wrote the song? Who taught you the words? The hidden hands that shaped you? It wasn't one person, one government, or one organization. It was something more insidious. A slow, steady process passed from generation to generation, wrapped so tightly around reality that it became invisible. The world you were given was not built to set you free. It was built to keep you in line, and it started before you even knew how to think. Look back at your childhood. What do you remember? Not just the events, but the lessons buried within them, the way authority figures spoke to you, the way television framed the world, the way school shaped your understanding of success, failure, and purpose. From the very beginning, you were given a role to play. If you followed the rules, you were rewarded. If you questioned them, you were punished, sometimes subtly, sometimes openly. A bad grade, a disappointed look, a moment of shame in front of your peers. These were not accidents, they were corrections, keeping you on the path you were expected to walk. And so, like everyone else, you adapted. You learned what was safe to say and what wasn't. You adjusted your dreams to fit what was realistic. You tamed your imagination, quieted your intuition, and became what the world told you to be. Have you questioned this before? Why were you told to sit still for hours in school, memorizing facts instead of exploring ideas? Why were you taught to obey without questioning? Why were you encouraged to fit in rather than stand out? It wasn't just about control. It was about predictability. A system cannot function if people are unpredictable. If they think too much, question too much, want too much. The easiest way to control someone is to make them believe they are free while keeping them in an invisible cage. Plato described this in the allegory of the cave. Imagine prisoners chained in a cave since birth, forced to watch shadows on a wall. They believe these shadows are reality because they have never seen anything else. When one prisoner escapes and sees the real world, he is blinded by the truth at first. But when he returns to free the others, they mock him. They refuse to believe him because the shadows are all they have ever known. You were born into a cave too, a world of carefully placed illusions designed to keep you looking in one direction. The people around you, your parents, your teachers, they were not your captors. They were prisoners themselves, passing down the chains they inherited, believing it was the only way. But some people wake up. Some people start noticing the cracks in the illusion, the way history is rewritten to fit a narrative, the way media controls emotion, the way authority manipulates fear to maintain order. And when you start to wake up, the system fights back. The greatest trick the program ever pulled was convincing you it doesn't exist. But it does, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. Look at how they trained you to view money, work, and success. Were you taught to build wealth or to trade your time for money? Were you encouraged to follow your passions or to choose what was practical? Look at how they programmed your relationships. Did they teach you how to connect deeply, or did they fill your mind with scripts from movies, songs, and social expectations? Did they teach you how to be whole on your own, or did they make you believe love was something you had to earn? Look at how they shaped your fears. What were you warned about? What dangers were exaggerated? What risks were ignored? Fear is one of the most powerful tools of control. If they can control what you fear, they can control how you live. And most of all, look at how they shaped your beliefs about yourself, about the world, about what is possible. In Buddhism, there is a concept named samsara. It refers to the endless cycle of birth, suffering, death, and rebirth, a wheel that keeps turning as long as one remains attached to illusion. This cycle is not just about physical rebirth, it is about the psychological and spiritual patterns that keep people trapped in suffering. Most people go through life chasing fleeting desires, money, status, relationships, external validation, believing these things will bring lasting happiness. But Buddhism teaches that all conditioned things are impermanent, anicca, and anything dependent on external circumstances will ultimately lead to disappointment. The world trains you to chase things that will never satisfy you. Advertising, social conditioning, and societal expectations push the idea that happiness lies in achievement, possessions, or recognition. Yet, the moment one desire is fulfilled, another arises. It is a never-ending treadmill. The world teaches you to fear things that do not truly threaten you. Anxiety about the future, fear of failure, and social pressures create an illusion of constant danger. But much of what people fear, judgment, rejection, imperfection, has no real power over their deeper self. The world encourages you to seek validation from people who are just as lost as you are. In samsara, everyone is caught in their own illusions, their own suffering. Seeking approval from others who are also struggling only reinforces the cycle. Buddhism offers a path to liberation, nirvana, the state of awakening beyond suffering and illusion. This is achieved through the right view, samadhi, seeing clearly that attachment and craving are the roots of suffering. Recognizing that happiness does not come from external sources, but from within. Another way is through mindfulness, sati. Becoming aware of the present moment and breaking free from automatic reactions, fears and desires, and there is letting go, vairagya. Releasing attachment to things, people and outcomes, understanding that clinging leads to suffering, while detachment leads to freedom. To break free from samsara is to wake up, to see through the illusions that keep you chasing, fearing and seeking in the wrong places. True freedom comes not from external achievement, but from the realization that you were never truly trapped to begin with. And the moment you begin to question it, the moment you step outside the script, the world calls you crazy. But maybe being crazy is the only way to be sane in a world that has been programmed for madness. You are not meant to be a cog in a machine. You are not meant to be predictable, you are not meant to be controlled, but breaking free requires something most people are too afraid to do. You must be willing to let go of what you thought was true. You must be willing to tear down the walls in your mind, brick by brick, until you see what was hidden beneath them. By now, you've seen the cracks in the illusion. You've felt the weight of invisible chains you never realized you were carrying. But seeing the cage is only the first step. If you want to escape it, you must understand how it was built, how they programmed your mind so deeply that you believed it was your own. The most dangerous forms of control are the ones that do not look like control at all. They are silent, woven into the fabric of everyday life, presented as normal, unquestionable, and even desirable. They don't need to force you into obedience when they can make you choose it yourself. So how did they do it? How did they turn you into a willing participant in your own programming? The tools of control you never noticed. It started with stories. Long before you could read, before you understood words, you were absorbing stories. Fairy tales, cartoons, bedtime fables, all of them shaping your expectations of the world. But did you ever stop to question what those stories were really teaching you? They told you that good people obey the rules and bad people break them. That success means being chosen, rewarded and crowned by society. That love is something you must earn, often through suffering. They gave you heroes who sacrificed their dreams for duty, who endured pain to prove their worth, who waited for permission to be free. And you believed those stories, because why wouldn't you? They were everywhere, repeated in books, movies, religion, history. But there were other stories too. The ones they didn't want you to notice. The Zen parables taught detachment from control, the ancient myths of tricksters who saw through the illusion. The Gnostic texts warned of false realities designed to keep souls trapped. The difference? Those stories weren't fed to you. You had to seek them out, and most people never did. Traditional education systems often emphasize memorization over critical thinking, which can limit independent thought. From the moment you stepped into a classroom, the programming intensified. You were not there to learn. You were there to memorize, to repeat, to absorb without questioning. They didn't teach you how to think. They taught you what to think. You were rewarded for compliance and punished for curiosity. You learned that the answers existed in books, in tests, in the words of authority, not within yourself. They called it education, but it was conditioning. A slow, steady erosion of independent thought, shaping you into a product of the system rather than a creator of your own reality. And the most brilliant part, they made you think it was for your own good. Fear has always been the greatest weapon of control. It keeps people small, hesitant, and obedient. Fear of failure keeps you trapped in jobs you hate. Fear of judgment keeps you silent when you should speak. Fear of the unknown keeps you clinging to the familiar, even when it makes you miserable. And they made sure that fear was always there, lurking beneath the surface. The news filled your mind with dangers, making you grateful for authority. Religion warned you of divine punishment for disobedience. Society punished nonconformity with ridicule, ensuring you would police yourself even when no one was watching. You were trained to fear stepping outside the lines. And the tragedy is, you never realized those lines were imaginary. They knew that a mind that is constantly occupied never has time to question, so they gave you distractions, endless streams of content, celebrities, scandals, mindless entertainment. They filled every moment with noise, keeping your thoughts shallow and your desires artificial. They made sure you had just enough comfort to keep you complacent, just enough struggle to keep you too exhausted to resist. And all the while, the program kept running. But the greatest trick of all was making you believe you were free. They let you choose between two political parties, two brands of soda, and two versions of the same lie. They let you express opinions as long as they stayed within the acceptable range. They let you dream as long as those dreams lead you back into the system, working, consuming, obeying. In many cases, control does not require force, but rather shaping perceptions so that alternatives seem impossible. They only needed to convince you that the cage was the whole world. But now you see it. You see how they shaped your thoughts, how they trained your emotions, how they kept you running in circles, mistaking movement for progress. And if you can see it, you can break it. Now that you see the program, you might think the worst of it is over. But the truth is, the most insidious part of their control isn't just how they shaped your thoughts, it's how they shaped your desires. Because if they can control what you want, they don't need to control anything else. A person who desires what the system provides will never rebel. A person who craves validation, money, or status will willingly chain themselves to the very thing that enslaves them. And most people never realize that their wants, their dreams, even their sense of self, were never truly their own. So how did they do it? How did they take something as personal as desire and reprogram it without you even noticing? The manufactured hunger for validation. Since childhood, you were taught to seek approval. From parents, from teachers, from peers. Every gold star, every grade, every good job was a signal. You are worthy only when others say you are. They trained you to look outward for validation instead of inward for truth. And then, as you grew older, they refined the trap. They replaced gold stars with social media likes, report cards with job titles, playground hierarchies with corporate ladders. The system evolved, but the program remained the same. Your worth was tied to what others thought of you. And when they control your sense of worth, they control you. Think about it. How many of your desires, your career, your possessions, even the way you present yourself are shaped by how you want others to see you? How much of your energy is spent chasing a version of yourself designed to impress, rather than one that feels real? This was no accident, because a person who finds validation from within cannot be controlled. And there is the illusion of success. They told you that success meant wealth, status, and achievement. If you worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, and played by the rules, you would be rewarded. But look around. How many people who have made it are actually happy? How many of them, after reaching the top, realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall? This is why so many celebrities, billionaires, and high achievers fall into despair. They were sold a dream that was never meant to satisfy them. They chased something that was designed to keep them running, not to bring them peace. And yet, the world keeps the illusion alive. They show you success stories, but not the cost. They highlight the victories, but not the emptiness that follows. Because if people knew that the game was rigged, they would stop playing, and a system without players collapses. The weaponization of love. One of the greatest manipulations of all was how they programmed your understanding of love. Through stories, songs, and movies, they fed you a script. Love was dramatic, love was painful, love was something you had to earn. They made you believe that love was outside of you, something to chase, something to sacrifice for. They made you crave the fantasy, not the reality. This is why so many people spend their lives looking for the one, believing that someone else will complete them. This is why relationships often feel more like transactions than true connections. It is why people accept toxic love, thinking suffering is part of the process. But real love does not enslave. It does not demand you change, conform, or prove yourself worthy. Real love does not come from the outside. It is something you uncover within, and they never wanted you to know that. Sartre, a leading existentialist, argued that true love cannot be about possession, control, or dependency. In Being and Nothingness, he describes how people often fall into the trap of bad faith, believing that their worth or completeness depends on someone else. When love is based on fear, insecurity, or the need for validation, it becomes a form of self-deception. Instead of recognizing their own inherent freedom and value, people seek to define themselves through another person. But for Sartre, real love must honor freedom, both one's own and the other person's. If love demands conformity, suppression, or the need to earn affection, it is not love but a form of emotional enslavement. Love, in its highest form, is not about filling a void. It is about two free individuals choosing to share their lives without losing themselves in the process. Perhaps the most powerful part of the program is the illusion that happiness is always just out of reach. They trained you to believe that you will be happy when you get the promotion, find the right partner, buy the house, or achieve the goal. But notice what happens each time you reach one of these milestones. The happiness fades, the hunger returns, and a new goal appears on the horizon, just far enough away to keep you running. This is not human nature, it is programming. Because a person who is content cannot be manipulated. A person who does not need anything from the system cannot be controlled by it. So they built a world where satisfaction is impossible. A world that feeds on your emptiness, that profits from your insecurity, that thrives on your belief that you are always one step away from fulfillment. But the truth is, you were never missing anything. You were never incomplete. The things they told you to chase were never the answer. The program only worked because it convinced you to look everywhere except within yourself. You're starting to see the truth. With understanding comes freedom, the way they made you crave things that would keep you trapped. The way they ensured you would never question the cage because you were too busy decorating it. But you are waking up, and once you wake up, the system loses its power over you. Because the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop needing their validation, their rewards, their definition of success, that is the moment you become truly free. You have seen the programming, you have felt its grip loosening. But there is one final layer, one last trick they played to ensure you never found your way out. They did not just shape your thoughts, they did not just manipulate your desires. They severed your connection to your true self, because a person who is disconnected from themselves is lost, aimless, and vulnerable. They become easy to shape, easy to control, and easy to manipulate. And if they could keep you from discovering who you really are, they would never need to force you into submission. You would do it willingly. So they built a world designed to pull you away from yourself at every turn. They made sure you would never look inward, never trust your intuition, and never remember your true power. And most people never do. Breaking your inner trust. When you were a child, you knew things without needing proof. You sensed when something was wrong. You felt when something was right. But they told you to ignore that voice. They taught you to listen to authority instead, to trust rules over instincts, to value external knowledge over internal wisdom. Every time you questioned something and were shut down, every time you felt something but were told you were wrong, your trust in yourself weakened. And when you stop trusting yourself, you start relying on the system. This was not an accident. They could not afford for you to hear your own inner guidance, because if you did, you would see through the illusion instantly. The truth is found in stillness, but they made sure you were never still. They filled every moment with noise, phones, screens, endless distractions. They trained you to fear silence, to crave stimulation, to be uncomfortable in your own presence. Because the moment you sit in true silence, the illusions start to fall away. You start to hear the voice that was silenced long ago, the one that does not need validation, does not need permission, does not need the world's approval, the voice that knows. And they could not let that happen. Your body was never meant to be an enemy. It was meant to be a guide, a messenger, a compass leading you back to yourself. But they turned it into a battleground. They filled you with shame, made you obsess over your appearance, made you distrust your own sensations. They trained you to live in your mind, disconnected from your physical being, because a person who is disconnected from their body is disconnected from their intuition, their instincts, their truth, and without that connection, they become easy to control. The fear of aloneness. Perhaps the greatest trick of all was convincing you that being alone is dangerous. They made you believe that solitude is loneliness, that if you are not constantly surrounded by others, physically or digitally, something is wrong, because when you are alone, you are forced to meet yourself. And if you ever truly met yourself, if you ever truly remembered, you would become untouchable. Now you see how deep the programming runs. You see how they kept you from yourself, how they made sure you would never question, never awaken, never realize your own power. But you are remembering now. And once you remember, the system loses its hold, because the moment you stop seeking outside of yourself, the moment you realize that everything you need, everything you are, was never missing, that is the moment you become free. The Stoic philosophers, particularly Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, taught that suffering comes from seeking fulfillment in things outside our control. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." When people chase external validation, wealth, status, relationships, they unknowingly place their happiness in the hands of the outside world. But Stoicism teaches that everything you need is already within you. Peace, strength, wisdom, and contentment arise not from acquisition, but from self-mastery. Buddhism teaches that suffering, dukkha, arises from craving and attachment, the constant belief that happiness exists somewhere in the future, just beyond reach. The Buddha's insight was that true freedom is found not in acquiring, but in letting go. The moment you stop seeking, the moment you recognize that nothing was ever missing, is the moment you awaken to reality as it is. The Buddha described this as nirvana, the end of illusion, where one no longer searches outside for what was always within. Modern society thrives on the belief that you are incomplete, that you must earn, prove, or acquire something to be whole. But the greatest thinkers and traditions across history have taught the opposite. You were never broken, you were never lacking, and everything you need is already inside you. The moment you realize this, not just intellectually but deeply, you become free. Not because you found something new, but because you stopped believing the lie that you were ever missing anything at all. And here is the most important truth of all. The moment you see the program, it loses its power. You are no longer controlled by unconscious scripts. You are no longer bound by the invisible chains they placed on your mind. Now, you stand at the edge of something new, because when the old system falls away, a question remains. If they are no longer programming you, who do you choose to be? The greatest challenge of waking up is what comes next. For so long, the program dictated your path. It gave you rules, expectations, and a blueprint for your life. Even if it was a cage, at least it was something. But when you tear down the illusion, you are left standing in the unknown. And this is where most people turn back, because freedom is terrifying. Without the program, there is no one left to tell you what to do, no structure, no familiar road to follow, and that is exactly why they fear awakened minds. Because a person who is truly free is no longer predictable, no longer moldable, no longer a pawn in their system. A free mind is dangerous because a free mind begins to create, the power of creation. The great secret, the one they never wanted you to find, is that you are not just here to exist. You are here to create, but they could never let you know that. Because a person who understands their creative power cannot be controlled. That is why they fill your mind with limitations. They told you to be realistic, to follow the rules, to stay within the lines of what is possible. Because the moment you realize that reality itself is shaped by belief, that the world around you is malleable, shaped by thought, intention, and energy, their illusion crumbles. The world you live in was built by those who believed in something beyond what was given to them. Every movement, every revolution, every great shift in history happened because someone refused to accept the world as it was. Now that power belongs to you. This is the part where most hesitate, because for the first time there is no script. There is only one possibility. But here is what they never told you. You were never meant to have all the answers at once. Creation is not about certainty. It is about movement. It is about stepping forward into the unknown, shaping something new with every breath, every choice, every moment of awareness. It is about unlearning what was forced upon you and remembering what has always been within you. It is about trusting yourself again, because deep down, beyond all the conditioning, beyond all the fear, you already know who you are. And now, nothing stands in your way. They programmed your mind since childhood, but you have awakened. You have seen the illusion. You have broken the chains, and now you are free to create. Not a life based on old scripts, not a self built on external expectations, not a path designed by those who sought to control you, but something entirely new, something that belongs only to you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.